This week we pull apart Apple's iPhone announcement and check out the HomePod Mini, plus 5 smartphones, all under $800 that you should consider if you're in the market for a new smartphone. Well, Apple's announced their brand new iPhone 12 and all the details are there for us to be discussed. We know the release date, the price, the different models. To go through all of that, we're joined by our resident Apple and app expert, Mike Boyd. How are you, Mike?
I'm good, Charlie. How are you?
I'm really well. iPhone 12. I understand you've got the iPhone 5 in your hand, so we can once again we can be reminded of what the square edge is all about.
Well, it was just a great. So you can just see it squared off there across the top, and it was just a great form factor. I mean, I was only just pulled it out, a couple of hours ago, and just in your hand, it feels really solid. So yes, they've gone away from the curved edge of the old iPhone. They're 10s and 11s, and I think this has been in since about the 8. So it's back to the square edge, which I think will be a big plus for people.
All 5G. You're an app developer as much as you are a follower of Apple News. What does that mean for apps?
Look, it'll mean for apps that you're going to have response times, data transmissions, and so forth are going to be a lot faster. But what everyone still has to remember is that a 5G compatible phone is actually only as good as the network it's attached to. So whether you're on Telstra, Optus, Vodafone, whichever network you're on, it'll really come down to how quickly those networks are making 5G available across the country.
The ability to go from 5G back to 4G back to 5G, that was an interesting point because at the moment 5G still chews a lot of battery power that we really don't accept being chewed. We want the fast speeds but not the lower battery time limits.
Look, that's right. And there was a really interesting piece in the presentation from Apple on Wednesday where they talked about the fact that in the US, 5G millimeter wave, which is a slightly different piece of spectrum, was available to Apple. Now, they made a very specific point about saying that was US only. So we're yet to see what that means when the device arrives here in a couple of weeks. But you're right. With that speed comes battery degradation, and it's much the same as the faster you go in your car, the worse your fuel efficiency is. So we all want that speed, but it's that finding that balance between is 4G going to be enough for what we need day to day, and is 5G really going to be that sort of edge case scenario where just when we think we need a little bit of speed, we can have it.
Whenever Apple does the iPhone announcement, the devices are immediately compared to the competition, the Huawei's, the Samsungs, for example. And some of the things in the presentation, IP68, that's the first time I remember Apple has included that level of water and dust resistance. There's other features in there too that could arguably be compared to competitors and pointed out the competitors have those features first. Is it a case, in your view, that once you're sort of a rusted-on iOS customer, you don't really require the latest, the most advanced hardware features? You want good hardware features and enhancements, but you don't have to necessarily have them to convince you to make that purchase.
Look, that's exactly right. And just back to the IP68 point, I was funnily enough, I was at a device release for another manufacturer only the other day, and they too made a point of saying that their device was IP68. And when I heard both, I sort of went, that's really interesting. I've not heard that before. And all of a sudden, I now need to have an iPhone that's as water and dust resistant as, the garden lights in the garden, or it's quite interesting that they made that point. But back to your more recent question around, how much extra do you really think you need? I think we're getting to the point where we're getting to the top of that curve of back, as I said, when the old iPhone 5 came out, the first sort of square edge, that was a significant step up, and that was down here sort of in the curve. We're now right up here where the incremental benefits you're getting in actual hardware features really are, I think, mostly all around those cameras, and because there really is very little else that you're getting in terms of step change in performance improvements.
The camera benefits or improvements, we will find that out once everyone's had the opportunity to go and have a play with them and all those kinds of things. In your view, are there improvements you would like to see based on your camera use of previous iPhone devices?
Look, I think certainly the low light examples. I mean, anyone who's used a smartphone in low light knows that that really is the areas that can make or break and really set the men from the boys, so to speak, in terms of their capabilities. I think certainly the Pro models of the iPhone 12, so the Pro and the Pro Max, the majority of their announcement in the Apple event on Wednesday was all around their camera hardware. So everything from the ultra wide to the macro lenses to the LiDAR that they're now using, which then helps to provide capabilities around augmented reality. So they really are putting a lot in there. So I think to answer your question, we won't really know until we get our hands on the devices and start to have a proper play with them to really understand, where the gaps might be. But they certainly look very impressive.
A more personal question now: how many Apple adapters do you have in your home?
I can reach up here on my bench and I can pull down. Well, there's 3.
Yeah.
No, there's a 4th. there's plenty of them. So, look, I think, again, I heard someone this morning making the point that, look, you can take the adapter away, but that just means I've got to go and buy another one because the cable that comes with the iPhone 12 actually now has a USB-C adapter. So all of these adapters that I just showed you here, they're the old, original full-size USB. Now I've got to get an adapter that's got USB-C. So I've now got to go and buy another adapter. That's another lot of packaging, another lot of delivery. So I think I get where Apple's going in terms of off-the-shelf, out-of-the-box environmental concerns, but it sort of didn't quite make sense, and I think people will see through that pretty quickly.
I imagine the makers of supplementary power adapters would be quite pleased because all of a sudden they're going to have a whole bunch of potential customers.
Yes, and that was one of the other things. So they've got now the MagSafe capability on the back of the iPhone 12 for connectors. So whether it be and this is very much the same technology that is used if you've got an Apple Watch, the way that the charging sort of pad, if you like, clicks onto the back of the watch, and it's the same as if anyone who's had an old MacBook Pro, where the power cord has that sort of that magnetized clicking adapter. That's going to make a big difference in terms of the way that you're going to be able to now charge the device, but also mount it, whether it's in your car or on your desk or on your bike or whatever it is. And interestingly, I don't recall having heard Apple mention the name of a third-party supplier before, but they made mention of Belk, and I think it was in the presentation on Wednesday. So a lot of there seems to be a lot of changes coming within Apple, knowing that, as I said, they're getting to that sort of top of that curve where they need partners and partnerships to help them keep growing.
I'll get to you talk to you about the HomePod Mini in just a second. But final point on iPhone with the 12. Any sleeper announcements that you think we should know about before we finish talking about that one?
Look, interestingly, the presentation on Wednesday they revealed the iPhone 12 Mini, which is, for all intents and purposes, only a little bit bigger than it's sort of between. That's the iPhone 5, that's the iPhone XS. It's sort of in between those two. So, again, look, a good device. I mean, as you say, the iPhone 12 range, 5G across the range, the A14 Bionic chip across the range, the new OLED screen across the range. So if you're looking for a relatively small form factor, high-powered Apple device. The iPhone 12, I think, will be very, very popular. 5 new colours. Off the top of my head, I can't remember them, but I know there's a red, a green, and a blue in there. And I think there's a black and a silver. So again, there's just those extra little shifts of things that Apple are doing to push out their demand curve.
Be interesting to see what happens when it goes on sale October 23. The Pro and Pro Max will go on sale early in November. Very quickly, HomePod Mini. Tell us about your thoughts on that one. Do you have the current one?
Look, no, I'm not a HomePod. I'm not a HomePod fan. I mean, I've never actually seen one in anyone's home. I've never really heard of anyone having one. We've got a wired sound system in the house, which is fantastic. And I know plenty of people who have Sonos and have other devices. The HomePod Mini essentially is the HomePod itself, as you know, is sort of a 15 centimeter high sort of cylinder. The HomePod Mini now is sort of almost the size of a large sort of grapefruit. So it's this sort of circular shape. Lights on the top with a power play and pause and volume buttons. Look, I hate to say it, I think it's probably the last roll of the dice for the HomePod. I just can't see. And maybe there are markets around the world where the HomePod's doing really well. Maybe it's a big seller in the US, but I just can't see it being going any further than where they are. Yeah,
Middle East, where they got some cash to throw around. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe.
I've never seen one in a house either, and I've got plenty of rusted on Apple friends. So we'll wait and see what goes on with that one. That one's going to cost about I think it was 150 either Australian or US.
149.
149, so much cheaper than the original HomePod. Mike Boyd, good to have a chat to you. Thanks for taking some time today, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Pleasure, Charlie. Talk to you soon.
Harman Kardon's Citation range of wireless speakers provides an easy way to set up premium, high-resolution audio around your home that you can also control with your voice. With a wide range of speakers, there's a suitable setup for every room. Start with just the Citation 1, or set up your living room with the Citation soundbar to go with your TV, along with the Citation towers for a wider soundscape. Add the Citation sub for big bass and spread the Citation 300, 500 and 1 throughout your home for fantastic audio in every room. These smart speakers make it really easy to play your favourite podcasts or music directly from your smart device. So with iPhone 12 being announced and having all the details available for us to consider, it's probably a good opportunity to have a look at other smartphones that are on the market so we can compare, contrast, and make our decisions as to what phone we're actually going to end up buying. Geoff Quattromani has been trawling through the options for us. He joins us again today. How are you, Geoff?
Very well, Charlie. How are you?
I'm really well. Look, I'm going to leave my opinions of the iPhone 12 to the side for the moment because I know that you've got a big bunch of handsets that you've been looking at. Look, if you sort of look at the sort of top 5 options that are out there in different price points, it doesn't bother me whether you want to start high or start low. What's the sort of number 5 option out there that we should have a look at?
Yeah, look, I think it's important here to acknowledge the fact that plenty of smartphones exist outside of Apple, but also outside of that above $1,000 mark. I think a lot of people think they need to spend over $1,000 to have a good smartphone, and it's definitely not the case. Now, I'm going to start low. I'm going to start super low in case you've got a teenager or somebody like that who wants a smartphone to do all their TikTok videos and whatever else. So they need the cameras, that they need the apps, and it's all to be there. Now, let's start with Nokia. Now, Nokia, for example, is a company that we knew a lot around their 3310. They had Snake. They had my first phone was a Nokia, but now they've entered the smartphone game. And here is the 5.3. This has a huge display. I mean, huge display. You could be sitting on the bus watching Netflix on this device, no problem. You've got your 4 cameras on the back still, 64 gigs of storage, a fingerprint sensor on the back, and it runs Android. And one of the great things that Nokia's acknowledged here is you're going to get a minimum of 3 years of support on the device, meaning security patches and updates will continue to flow. And again, we've only paid $350 for this device.
Wow. And when they talk about support, are they talking about moving up to new versions of Android, or are they just talking about patch support so we get those security blocks for known exploits, for example?
It's both of those. And it was interesting. I actually interviewed the boss of HMD last week to have that conversation, to talk about what they're actually doing around that strategy. And they're saying that they want to differentiate themselves by guaranteeing that end-to-end support, so that they'll give you the device with a clean version of Android, which means that when new updates come or new versions, they can roll them out to you.
Very, very clever. All right, so that's the Nokia 5.3. That's $349 at the minute.
That's right.
Here in Australia. What's the next option you want to consider for viewers?
Look, step it up an extra $100. Here is a device from TCL. Now, most people know TCL as a company that makes televisions, and they certainly make nice screens, which they've used inside this device. Now, the screen on this, and you won't be able to see it on your end, but it is a beautiful display. If I'm comparing this to a high-end Samsung or a high-end iPhone, they actually don't differentiate that much. That's one of the biggest benefits here, is the display displays some real true color when you're looking at images and video content. You're going to get 4 cameras on the back on this as well, 2 flashes on the back in case you're taking photos in the nightclub. These are the things that kids do. I'm not talking about myself, but you're still going to get a huge screen, dual SIM, which is something I quite like. So if you're out there and you're carrying 2 phones at the moment, because maybe you've got a work phone and a personal phone, this can actually be really handy in that regard, because you put both SIM cards in the one device. You can make and receive calls on either SIM card, and I think that's a really handy thing. Less clutter in your pocket. But for $449, it makes me laugh when I look at these kind of devices and think, how many of these can I buy for the cost of that new iPhone?
A lot, and it's you're getting much better quality these days for that investment as well. That's TCL 10L. What's the next option out there that we should consider?
So let's go to Samsung. I mean, I think Apple and Samsung are always rivals when it comes to the flagship phones, but here is a smartphone called the A31, $499. We're getting what looks like their flagship range. It has a beautiful large display. It has 4 cameras on the back as well, with a flash. Obviously, the front-facing camera is much more high-end as well, so it takes those wide-angle photos as a selfie if you need to do that. 128 gigs of base storage plus expandable. So when you think again at the iPhone 12 range, the iPhone 12 starts at 64 gig, and you're paying over $1,000. Here is something at $499 with 128 gigs up front. With, for $20, you can double that by putting a micro SD card in there. So, this is, again, running all of the Samsung goodies that you're used to seeing in there, access to all the apps that you would be expecting, and a fraction of the cost. And to be honest, I think this almost can undercut some of Samsung's high-end phones as well. I think by releasing a device like this, they're potentially risking people buying the cheaper phone than spending more on their S20, for example.
The rust on Samsung customer does exist, and no doubt if they've got $500 in their pocket, they'd be looking at this one, the A31, $499 at the moment. Look, Google Pixel 4a, $799 5G. I'll tell you, that's a good bit of kit for under $800.
This is the one that definitely ruffles the most feathers, I think, because we're talking about a device with 5G, which runs exactly what Google wants it to run in terms of hardware and everything else for less than $800. And all of the iPhones that were announced yesterday have 5G on board. They all cost over $1,000. This one doesn't. So if you are looking to jump on the 5G network, make the most of all those extra data speeds that it does offer, plus the fact that you still have a really large, beautiful display, everything that Google wants you to have, 128 gigs of storage, this is a bargain buy. And I know that it's probably early to say phone of the year, maybe it's not, but when you start comparing with the features on this device to others and what it does offer for the money, it's astounding. The camera on the back, there's not as many lenses as the other ones have. This one only has the 2, but what you'll find is nighttime photography is insane. The way it does night shots, it makes a dark room light up. It's quite bizarre.
The thing with Google and what they've done with Pixel is they've never chased iPhone Pro or top-of-the-line iPhone. They've never chased Samsung top-of-the-line. I mean, they haven't even got the top-of-the-line chipset in this thing. But they're just saying, you know what, we'll give you the best software we can do. We'll give you a good chipset. We'll give you a good camera. We'll enhance it with software as best as we can. but we'll charge you under $800. It's an astounding purchase.
Is and it's quite interesting too that they have the Pixel 5, which I've been using as my daily driver for the past week and a half, and I love that device too. But the only difference between the Pixel 5, which is priced at $999, is that it has wireless charging and water resistance. That is the only two differences between that and the 4A with 5G. So if you are in the market to potentially change camps, maybe you're going to move from Apple to Android. If your budget's around that $799 mark, I couldn't recommend it further. I think the 4A with 5G is something that makes sense. You can buy two of them for the price of one iPhone 12, and that way you're both upgrading, husband and wife, maybe both kids, whatever it is. I mean, get two new devices instead of one new device. Sounds pretty good to me. It
does sound pretty good to me too. You can also get four of them for the cost of the foldable Samsung that they've released recently. Of course, G-mee Connect as well for the kids. Check that one out. I'm using it as my day-to-day phone, but definitely something for the kids to check out there. Geoff Quattromani. 4 good handsets, and we will put them on the Facebook page for everyone to have a look at. Good to have a chat this week. Thanks for giving us some time again. We'll chat to you next week.
Thank you, Charlie.
That's it for the show. Big thanks to Geoff Quattromani, Mike Boyd as well. Lots to think about with Apple and their iPhone and those smartphone options. We'll be back again next week with more Cyber Shack Live.